Hey guys, it's Bent Beyond Repair. I have enough LP that at the end of tonight I'm going to be hitting Challenger. And so in this video, I just wanted to go through my personal background for those who want to know on like what is my story and how did I hit Challenger after so many years and that sort of thing. I'll be doing a separate video on how I improved at the game and what I did differently in game that I think sets me apart. So that'll be different. This is more of the personal story and background. So I first started playing League kind of at the end of season 2, beginning of season 3, but I was like casually leveling at that point with my friends. I didn't start playing ranked until about the summer of season 3, I think. So kind of middle of season 3. And it was really crazy. Like I had no PC gaming experience whatsoever, so I was absolutely terrible. I came into the game. I actually, before I played, I think I watched the season 2 World Championship with a friend of mine, and we were watching it, and they had like a Nivea and Corky and Kale, and I thought because they had picked, there were only like a couple of champions that are like flying champions, right? And I thought because like they were picking all of them over and over again, I thought that like flying champions were OP or had some maybe special movement or maybe they could fly through walls or something like that. Like I just had no idea how any of it worked, right? So it was all intuition. And I was also like in middle school or something at the time. So it's not like I was that bright, you know? So I come into it, the only games I had played before I played League is I had played a little bit of Call of Duty on console and I played a little bit of Minecraft. Well, actually, a lot of Minecraft for sure. So I was one of the OG. You hear a lot now about kids who played Minecraft and then got into other games, and it's kind of shocking when you hear that this kid played Minecraft and then they're like an amazing gamer or whatever. But I will say Minecraft did not help me with League whatsoever. It was a disaster. I mean, I was never very good at Call of Duty. I was, I mean, can you really be good at Minecraft? I don't know. But I mean, whatever I was doing with Minecraft was not competitive. So in Call of Duty, I was like a point 0.7 KD player, like not even average. I had a friend who was really good at Call of Duty in like elementary and middle school. A little young to be playing Call of Duty, but we managed. We may have been squeakers. And I used to legit, this is, kind of you get into like, well, how did you choose your role and stuff like that? I actually, and maybe I backtracked this a little bit, but I actually used to kind of play support for him in Call of Duty because I was very bad and he was very good. Like he was good enough he could get like 25 kill streak and drop a nuke good. So I was never getting high kill streaks because I was just running and gunning it. I would like, maybe one of the reasons my KD was low is because I was just a kid having fun. I'd play games where I'd use knife only or pistol only, stuff like that. And what I do when I was playing with this group of friends is I'd run the lowest kill streaks that you could get. So I think at like 2, you'd get a UAV, which basically reveals everyone on the map. And then at 3, you'd get a care package, which would drop, and there'd be a chance that you get, some higher level kill streak from it. And essentially what I'd do is I'd run these kill streaks and then I'd kind of like guard him and protect him. And then if I got these kill streaks would actually just enable him because we're getting vision on the map and seeing where the enemies are. And we're giving the care package to him so that he can use, whatever he gets from the care package, chopper, drone strike thingy, whatever it was, he'll use that to help accelerate his kill streak. So I actually main support in Call of Duty, a game where you can't play support. We even did try, and this is maybe the first inclination that I might be a Braum player. We did try at one point, I did play with a riot shield that I would hold in front of him at one point, but that was not super successful. That's a little bit hard. But those may have been the early Braum days for me. So that was back in the day. And then I played a lot of Minecraft, big Minecraft arc as a kid. And then I really started getting into League, like I said, the end of middle school, like 8th grade or something like that. And I was terrible. Like I said, I didn't know. I thought the flying champions must be good because they were flying and everyone was picking them. I thought that if you right clicked the turret faster or right clicked the minions faster, that you would like auto attack faster, which in hindsight, maybe that's kind of a good thing to think because even though that's not true, it probably got my clicks up real quick considering I had no experience, playing on a PC. Which, of course, I should mention, I did start playing League on a Mac laptop, like a MacBook or whatever, with 2 gigabytes of RAM and a mouse pad, or a mouse pad, or that's not the right word for it, trackpad. It was rough times. I hate to admit it, but I was actually a bit of a top lane main when I was leveling up, but just for a little bit. So I did play Jax back in the day, but that was a long time ago, and it was only from like level 1 to 10. So hey, don't blame me there. But I played Jax, old Irelia, old Pantheon, until I got like level 10, level 20, something like that. And then I think I realized that we had a couple of people playing top lane, and that if we were going to, play together and stuff like that, and that nobody played support. And I was never that good. I was actually the worst one out of our group for the most part. Not exactly, but I was pretty much at the bottom. And so, I figured, well, support's easy to play. I can play with my friends. It's more of a social role, more of a role where you can play with your friends. If we get into ranked, I'll be a valuable asset as a duo, right? Rather than us splitting up and never playing. I can like duo with the AD carry players and stuff like that. And, so I ended up switching to support, which was probably a big mistake because it's the only person that role swapped. Although role swapping into support can actually be pretty beneficial, but as the only person who role swapped, I didn't have very much time to learn support before I went into ranked. And so I get into ranked in like the summer of season 3, and it is a disaster. I mean, we were really bad at the game. I think one friend plays bronze 4. Bronze 5 was the lowest at the time. So to be fair, he was one division off of the lowest. I placed bronze 3. Another one of my friends placed bronze 3 with me. And then our AD carry friend got like silver 4, and he duoed with my friend who played jungle. And he also got silver 4 because they duoed all their placement games together, but he should not have gotten silver 4. And he went like 1-19 or something like that, or maybe 3-17, something terrible for his next 20 games. And it was so bad, and it felt so bad for him when he started playing ranked on his own, that he quit the game right then and there. And after spending months, after school leveling for 30, boom, he quit. He had enough of ranked after losing that many games. So in a way, it was a blessing, because if I had duoed with that AD carry and gotten placed in silver, it might have felt nice to start in silver and higher than everybody else in the friend group, but probably would have just felt really bad and maybe quit the game. So I think, like most people who have eventually gotten really good at League, there are going to be different reasons that like drive you to be good at League. And I definitely think that one of the things for me that drove me to get good at League, which is not necessarily a healthy reason, but it's the truth, is because I was always bad at games compared to my friends. I felt like, I needed to prove, or I wanted to prove, that I was like as good as them and could hang. And so that was a big motivator for me. But unfortunately, as with most things, especially if it takes a long time to get good at them, by the time that I had gotten good at the game and way better than them, a lot of them had just stopped playing, and moved on to other things. So I think a big change was when we went from middle school to high school. A lot of people definitely just in my friend group stopped playing when we got to high school because they were more involved in what's going on with school and less involved with playing games like League, which is totally fine. But then you're fighting your own demons. You're grinding on your own for no reason to prove something to nobody, rather than to because it's something that you, well, I do genuinely enjoy League though, so I won't say that it's not like I'm out here grinding League and I don't enjoy it. There's definitely some big ups and downs, and everyone knows that with League. So I genuinely enjoy playing the game. Obviously, I enjoy talking about it. I wouldn't spend so long talking about it and making content if I didn't enjoy it. But you definitely have things like that push you and that kind of eat away at you. And, over the years, there's definitely been not just like that original group of friends, but of course, there's been like other people that I've ran into over the years, who, I've wanted to prove wrong for one reason or another, that have helped motivate me to do that sort of thing. Obviously, we talked about in the video where I ended in GM, in college, transferring to the University of Michigan and having like 1 year where I could play League there, and, having a lot of potential and getting to Masters for the first time, and like being kicked out of the tryout after the first 2 games, when I was 2-0 and like performing totally fine. Like, it's kind of crazy. Even now, like looking back at it as a challenger player, like I know what my weaknesses were when I was first getting into Masters and what I've improved on since then. And I don't think that it's anything crazy that should have prevented me from at least continuing to try out with the team, or, having participated as, a second or a third string support for the team, because they had 3 teams. There was really no reason to do that. And so that was, a very frustrating thing, obviously. So there's been stuff like that over the years. My situation was never that severe or anything like that. Most of the time, I turned these grudges up myself because I wanted to use it as motivation to get better at the game. I'm not like, I don't have a story like Bjergsen where I was like bullied in kindergarten or something like that into getting good at League. That's not how it worked for me. But there have definitely been, of course, players you run into over the years in solo queue even, or in school or whatever. And those people motivate you to get good at the game because they talk a lot of trash and they're not very good. And so it's crazy to think now that, with all of those games that I played and with all of the people I was friends with over the years, that I was able to get better at, at a game, a very competitive game, like one of the most popular competitive PC games, to get better than at this game than anybody, that I, interacted with for the most part. I mean, I guess there's a couple of challenger players I interacted with, but I actually have never had any beef, as far as I'm aware, with any challenger players. So, that feels really good. It also feels really good to have been playing League for like 12 years, and to have finally accomplished the goal of getting challenger. It's not like when I was in bronze, I knew I wanted to get challenger. So it's not like it's been a 12-year long goal, but it's definitely a journey that started 12 years ago. And so it's a really crazy, surreal feeling when you have something that you've been working on for 12 years. And you've achieved something that you've been working on for 12 years. I mean, even with like, my relationship and my marriage, not to compare them because you get into trouble there real quick. But that hasn't even been going on for 12 years. Right. And that feels like such a huge part of my life and such an amazing part of my life. So to think that, like, not that they're equivalent or anything, to be clear, Ripley, but like to think that the League journey is even older than that like half of my life has been, playing League and trying to get better at it. And that I've reached kind of the pinnacle of what it means to be good at the game, to be like a top 300 player, is crazy. And also to do it in the way that I wanted to do it, which was just one-tricking Braum. I had a lot of people tell me that you couldn't get to Challenger one-tricking Braum. And I had a lot of people tell me that I needed to change my champion pool. I had a lot of people tell me that, it's not really possible, that people will ban your champion. What are you going to do when people ban your champion? What are you going to do when, when you get bad matchups? Blah, 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 blah. And I mean, you can look at the stats. The stats don't lie. I mean, I think last split, you can look, my last split, my two most commonly played matchups were versus Lulu and versus Karma. And I had like a 70% win rate versus Lulu and a 60% win rate versus Karma. And it's very simple. Even at GM or Challenger, somebody who has dedicated, I guess Braum came out in season 4. I didn't really start maining him until like season 5. But, I played a little bit on him in season 4. But let's say I've been playing Braum for like 10 or 11 years. When you have somebody who's been playing Braum seriously for like 10 or 11 years, and you put them up against a guy who's like first timing Senna or Karma or Lulu because they think that it counters Braum, they're going to get absolutely destroyed because they may think that they know what they need to do to win the matchup, but I know what I need to do to survive the matchup a lot better than they do. And so it's not even close, right? When you put me in a matchup like that. So that's all very interesting, very crazy. I guess, let's see, what else is there to the story? Oh, of course, I mean, I've said some of this stuff before with the GM and the master videos when I got there for the first time, but so after middle school, we got into high school. Most of the friend group, stopped playing League as much, but I was still on the grind. There were some people who were still playing. By that time, I had gotten to silver and passed all of, let's see, everyone except the guy who introduced us to the game originally, who had been in like plat, who was no help, by the way, at getting better at the game. Thanks a lot for that. He could have accelerated me quite a bit, but instead he was trolling me by telling me to build 4 Doran shields over and over again on top lane when the passes didn't stack. So, had he coached me up in the beginning, we might have been here a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. We were having fun. We were trolling. We didn't know what potential there was, with me playing support. But so anyways, people stopped playing. But by the time they had stopped playing, a lot of those people quit and never got out of Bronze 4, never got out of Bronze 3. I think the 80 carry player, I don't know, maybe he got a little bit higher up, but he never got out of Silver 4, Silver 3 range. So the only guy who was higher than me at that point was the guy who was plat before we even started playing, who had introduced me to the game. And I was in like silver, maybe silver 1, silver 2. And that's when I met Shawn. I met Shawn through a mutual friend, actually that 80 carry player I mentioned. And Shawn was a Korean exchange student at a high school in my state, a different high school than I went to, but he was friends with the 80 carry who I knew from middle school. He had gone to a different high school. He introduced me to this guy through League, and we started duoing together. So Shawn is TSP Korean Katarina, and he was a OG Katarina one trick. Although, he hasn't, you're not going to find anything about him. He hasn't played in a long time, as far as I know. In fact, I don't know what's happened to him at all. But basically what happened with him is he was like, hey, there's this clan of Korean gamers that I know, and we got to get in it, and we got to get better at the game. We got to get in this clan, but we got to get gold to be in this clan. He was always 1 rank ahead of me. So he was gold and I was silver. And he was like, you got to get to gold so that you can join this Korean gamer clan. And I was like, sure, whatever, let's do it. So we duoed, and, I played a bit of Braum, a bit of Morgana, stuff like that in season 4. And we were a killer duo because, I mean, we're playing in gold. It's pretty easy, gold, silver games with Katarina that can't be CC'd with Morgana Black Shield, or with Braum where, she's proccing the passive with that. So we were kind of unstoppable. And we got into gold pretty quickly, and then we got into the Korean gamer group, and that was a ball. So this Korean gamer group was like this TeamSpeak clan. This was back in the day before Discord. You youngins wouldn't know. But we had a TeamSpeak server, and I was the only white guy in the TeamSpeak. It's literally like 100 Korean guys. And they speak Korean most of the time, and I have no idea what they're saying. And they did like some in-house games to see what I was like, or whatever, or maybe they were just running some in-house games. We were just kind of playing for fun. And I started trolling him. I locked in Nunu support, and the guy who was like the head of the clan, it's like this old guy. It's like the head of the clan, probably like 30 or something like that or whatever. And he was playing 80 carry, and I locked in Nunu support. And I told him that he was useless. And I started, you probably can't do this anymore. Oh, back when Nunu could like W, empower, and give attack speed and stuff like that to a carry, and Nunu support used to be more viable because of that back in the day. You could put it on minions instead. And so I put it on our cannon minion and told him that our cannon minion was more useful at 80 carry than he was. And, there was a lot of banter. There was a lot of toxicity. It was an interesting kind of fraternity. And it was a mix of people. There was like an old guy, Jokers. It's like a 40-year-old Korean welder in Canada who played League, and I think his cousin was in it or something, was younger. And, so he played. He was funny as hell. And basically, with this group, the goal was to just improve, right? Like everyone was trying to get really good at the game. Everybody took the game really, really seriously, and put a lot of pride in their rank. When we played in-house games and stuff like that, although mostly we were just playing solo queue or duoing with each other, but when we played in-house games and stuff like that with each other, we were extremely toxic to each other. There was nothing off limits. Everyone was going to be friends at the end of the day. We'd yell and swear at each other all day long, and there was no problem with it. It was a true, amazing fraternity. And it's something that, I wish we'd saw more of in the League community, because again, like if you look at videos like my in defense of toxicity, I think you have to understand, especially when you're trying to get good at something, especially if you're a young guy and you're taking something seriously competitively. I think it's totally normal and healthy to like let out some anger and some frustration, as long as other people are able to do the same, as long as you can roll with the punches, right? Like if you dish it out and you can take it back, it's totally healthy and normal for guys to banter back and forth like that, to criticize each other's gameplay. And I think it's super healthy for improvement. I also think that it's one of the differences, probably, I would guess, from interacting with all those Korean people for years, between what culturally helps make Korean players really good at the game. And I'm a big advocate that there are other non-cultural things as well, like ping and stuff like that, and player size, or player pool. They have like 4 times as many players in the NA. All of the people playing solo queue there are playing on like 8 ping, because the country's small and the server's right in the middle, whereas everyone in NA is playing on, not me, I'm on 12, but like a lot of people are playing on like 60 ping on the east and the west coast, and that's where most of the people are. So there's stuff like that, but I think culturally there's issues as well. And I think one of the big things culturally is that the Korean players were dead set on improving no matter what, and they weren't afraid of hurting anyone's feelings, and they weren't scared to have their feelings hurt. They just wanted people to be straight up, to be honest with them, and to tell them like it was if they were playing the game bad, or if they had thoughts on, or if you had thoughts on how they could play the game differently, and you fit right in as long as you were able to take the same thing back. And it helped me improve dramatically. So I went from, like, when I was trying to join, I was silver. By the time I was done, I was diamond. And so to finish up the story with Shawn real quick, so Shawn and I duoed. We got to, from silver to gold. He went from gold to plat during that time because he was a rank ahead of me. And then he went from plat to diamond, but he was in his diamond promo games, and he told me, hey, I want to play my promo games on my own. I want to play my promo games on my own, right? And I was like, sure. You can play your promo games on your own. You do you. And he lost his first 2 in a row. And now he's down 0-2. And he's like, I'm not going to make it. We got to go back to duoing. Let's just, give it a shot. We'll just go back to duoing and give it a shot. And I ran it back. And I had an absolute monster performance, actually on Soraka in 3 games. Monster performance. And we ran his diamond promo series all the way back from 0-2 to 3-2, and he made it. And then I went from gold to platinum while playing with him. So we went 2 ranks together. So from silver to platinum for me, and for him gold to diamond. And then he got deported. Um, Not exactly deported, but he kind of got deported. Basically, he, I guess, was, his host family caught him with weed or something like that and told his parents back in Korea. And one day, with no warning at all, he was never on the server, never on League ever again. And so that was really sad, because this is a guy I had hung out with and talked to every day after school, grinding League together, like taking the game really seriously together, you know, sharing our hopes and dreams with for 2 years. And then all of a sudden he was just, last online 8 years ago kind of feel. So, that's it happens. So he was back to Korea. I think his parents were mad, and that he was just spending all his time playing League and smoking weed. And they took him home real quick, and I never heard from him ever again. You know, especially because no one uses Skype anymore. So, who knows what happened to Shawn? But that's what I heard from somebody else in the clan, that he got sent home to Korea, packed his bags the next day, and was gone. And then let's see. So then I was platinum, and at the time it was kind of winding down things with the Teaspoon group, the TSP Korean clan. But they had some really good players in there, and the top players in the clan, specifically one of these 80 carry players, was like, I don't know, maybe like D1 in solo queue or something like that. And he had a ranked fives team that was also in like D1 or D2. And I was kind of into their ranked fives team, because I was always obviously somebody who preferred competitive more. I really liked esports and that sort of thing. So it was more attractive to me, right, a team like that than solo queue was. So I find out about this fives team, and I'm like, hey, can I, like spectate some of your guys' games? And he's like, yeah, of course. Like, join up, watch what's going on. And I started spectating their games, and I'm like, you guys are pretty good. Do you have any like coach or like analyst or anybody helping you guys whatsoever? And of course, like, these guys couldn't speak very good English. Most of these guys in this group were like high school or college students who would come to the US from Korea, and a lot of them, their English was pretty scuffed. Like, these guys were deep in the League space, right? These guys were playing League, not learning English. So I talked to him, and I was like, you guys don't have anybody helping you like review your games or anything like that. And you guys are like at the cusp of being able to like qualify for some serious stuff. And so, they said, sure, like, if, obviously if you want to just spend your time watching our games or whatever and sending us some feedback, like, that's great. So I kind of like, I kind of self did it, but this is how it works in esports. You kind of, you grind your way in there. And so just for a short period of time, but maybe for a month or something like that, I just watch a few of their games after school and kind of give them some feedback on like what I thought that they were doing really well and what I thought they were doing wrong in their games, so that they had an extra pair of eyes or whatever on their games, and so that I could learn how their games were being played at a high level, and maybe learn something about the game myself. And they got really good off of that feedback, and off of them also just getting better. And they went from being like a D1 ranked fives team over the course of like a month or two, to being the number 2 ranked fives team on the NA ladder, which was absolutely wild. So they got really, really, really good. And back then, you could actually qualify for the Challenger Series if you were top 20 on the ranked fives team ladder. The top 20 teams were invited to a tournament, and a certain number of those teams from that tournament made it into the Challenger Series for the next year, and then there would be promotion and relegation. The top 3 Challenger Series teams could even promote into the LCS. So they were very much on a path to pro, not just as an individual, but like as a whole team. They could have potentially qualified, because they were legitimately one of the best teams in NA. And so they didn't know about this at all. So I was explaining the whole competitive ecosystem to them, and like asking them if they wanted to enter this tournament. And they said that they actually didn't. This is crazy to me, but absolutely Giga Chad. They said actually were not interested in playing professionally or qualifying for this tournament. We just want to play with the bros, some ranked fives on after school. So they were like the top two team on the solo queue ladder or on the teams ladder, and they didn't even want to participate in the tournament. And I think they legitimately qualified for the tournament. Like they were one of the top 20 teams, but they just didn't reply to the email invite. So I think, they just invite like the 21st team or whatever if they get no response. So they were just like qualified for playing in the Challenger Series qualification tournament, not even interested. So I kind of rolled that into like, hey, I kind of, helped this team get better by VOD reviewing their games and stuff like that for a couple of months. What if I go to a team that's actually qualified, that actually wants to participate in this tournament, and just ask if I can be an analyst or something for that team? And so one of the teams that I found was Zenith Esports back in the day in like 2016 or something like that. And so I talked to Sam, the owner of Zenith, and I was like, I think I literally shot him a message through their website or something, like their contact us button. And, I explained that I had been helping this team, for a while in ranked fives, and that, I'd be interested in helping his team. And I wanted to, be a part of a team that was actually trying to play in the open qualifier tournament, or the Challenger Series qualifier tournament, it was called back then. And he was like, sure. So, we did that. And I worked with two rosters with Zenith Esports, which was kind of the first serious amateur team that I helped work with. And first roster, not really that notable. We were on a pretty unfortunate time crunch, and our coach kind of bailed on us, so it was a bit doomed. But that one was real rough. That was rough. We had like 2 weeks to put the rest of the roster together. I mean, that was just straight up depressing, actually. So Sam, the owner of the team, was actually like a drone pilot for the military, and he was using this is classic NA. He was using his money from drone piloting for the military to fund his League of Legends team. And I think that they had like a gaming house, and two of the players who had been with the team for a while, Virus and Shawn. Virus was a 80 carry player, mostly played Draven, I think, and Shawn was a top laner, mostly played a little bit of Gnar at the time, I think, but I don't know that was his main champion or whether that was just meta. But anyways, those two were like really trying to go pro, but they had been playing in amateur for a long time and hadn't really gotten anywhere, and it was kind of their last shot. So when I joined in with this team, those were the only two players they had. We had no coach. And we were missing 3 players, and there were like 2 weeks until you had to be top 20 to even qualify for the tournament. And so we found a coach, and we found 3 other players, and we got to top 20 in 2 weeks on the ranked fives ladder, teams ladder, qualified for the tournament. And then first round we draw Team Liquid Academy, which was when this was back right around the end of that Challenger Series qualification system, although they brought it back now. So it was right around the tail end because teams were farming teams. So like LCS teams like Cloud9 and Team Liquid specifically were just farming spots. So like Cloud9 had Cloud9 Academy qualify, which renamed to Gravity and then was sold. And Team Liquid had Team Liquid Academy qualify, or maybe Team Liquid's was Gravity. Oh yeah, Team Liquid's was Gravity. Cloud9's was FlyQuest, right? Both Cloud9 and Team Liquid were farming challenger teams. They'd get a second LCS spot. They can't own both spots because there's a conflict of interest if the teams play. They'd sell their spot for like $1 million after they've relegated a team to people who want to own an LCS team. And they just make bank. So they'd pay, you could pay top tier amateur talent like $50,000 a year per player. And now all of a sudden you've got, an expense of, what have you got? Like, what is that? $250,000 a year. And if you qualify, you sell the team for $1 million. And if you're Cloud9 or Team Liquid, chances you qualify are pretty good. And even if you don't qualify, you're paying pretty minimal amount of money at the time to have also some of the top talent on standby, kind of on retainer for your main team. So now all of a sudden your 80 carry is shitting the bed in professional. Boom, you bring in this, you have a second team. So you bring in this, this player. So these teams were really rocking and rolling and farming the challenger spot. So we got first round Team Liquid Academy, and it wasn't even amateur players. They had straight up like Keith McBrief and a bunch of other people who had played in the LCS before. Literally, they just threw former LCS players into a team. It wasn't really even top tier amateur talent. It was literally like LCS players that they just had on standby that they were throwing into these rosters and absolutely crushing the amateur scene. So we got first rounded by those guys. And then the roster disbanded, and it was really sad because I think for Chump John and Virus, it was kind of their last run at things. So I think they moved out of the house and moved on with their life, never to be heard from ever again, unfortunately. But I mean, what could we do? I wish I could have done more for them, but I was like a platinum or a diamond player at the time. I didn't even know that much about the game. I was just trying to help, and our coach bailed. Like I said, I think he was like not showing up to practices, and we saw him on Steam playing Counter-Strike or something. He didn't even like main league. He made like an FPS game or something. It was a disaster. And we had 2 weeks to prepare, to get a whole roster together and to prepare and practice. I mean, you need a roster built, a couple of months in advance and practice together for a couple of months. You don't just send it 2 weeks before the thing starts. You're never going to make it, even if we had done that, imagine spending 3 months training and putting a lot of time in, and then getting Team Liquid Academy in the first round and getting blown out anyways would have sucked. But yeah, so that was sad. And then the roster went dormant because we had nobody on the team. So I was just like on standby basically, but no team. And then we got really lucky. First big player that I interacted with is Zenith moved on to a new roster and a new coach. And one of the players on that team, I mean, there were a lot of good players on that team, but one of the players on that team was Contracts, was the jungler. Contracts was the jungler for that second roster that I worked with on Zenith. And he was like a crazy prodigy jungler. This was before the second open qualifier for that year, or maybe, actually, I want to say it was after the second qualifier for that year. So there was no Challenger Series qualifier. It was kind of like dead time in the year between tournaments. And so they just played in one tournament, which was called like the HTC Ascension Tournament or something like that. And they did really, really well. And Contracts was very, very good. And I think immediately after that tournament, he got offered, like $50,000, $60,000 a year to play for Team Ember, which was like an amateur team that was actually funded by investors trying to get into the LCS or whatever. So kind of similar to what Cloud9 and Team Liquid were doing, but like not backed by an LCS team, just kind of their own thing. So they were like serious and paying people a lot of money and getting the best players in amateur. And Team Ember was very good. And then he moved from Team Ember to Cloud9 Academy. Cloud9 Academy picked him up because they also thought he was very, very good. And then from there, when Meteos retired or whatever, they moved Contracts straight into starting jungler for Cloud9 in 2017. And then that year, his rookie year, Cloud9 dominated, and they went to Worlds, made it out of groups, went to quarterfinals, and they lost to Team WE from China, like 2-3. So they were one game off of making it to semifinals at Worlds his rookie season, which was crazy. And then the next year they did contract negotiations, and obviously Contracts is thinking, I mean, it's in his name, right? He's thinking to himself, I had like an amazing rookie year. And if you know anything about sports contracts and stuff like that, essentially when you're on a rookie deal, you're getting paid like the bare minimum. But then your first year, you're getting paid the bare minimum. But then if you really perform and show that you're like a really high quality player, like a franchise player, they got to offer you some serious money. Otherwise, you'll just go to another team and get serious money there. And so if they want to keep you, they've got to up your contract from a rookie contract to a real serious high paying contract. But unfortunately, especially with a game like League where there's not very many teams, your options can kind of be limited. So let's say that like at the time maybe TSM didn't need a jungler. If there's only really two big competitive teams in like Cloud9 and TSM that are willing to pay the big bucks, and TSM has already got their, you know, their franchise jungler, then you don't have any other options. And so you just have to take what Cloud9 is going to give you in terms of a salary and be happy to be playing in the LCS at all, and focus on your career. And maybe another year when opportunities are more open to you to go to other teams, you can more seriously threaten to move to another team and you can negotiate a higher contract. Instead, contracts ended up saying, you know, there's no way that you're going to pay me this low. And Cloud9 didn't keep him. And he went to some bottom tier LCS teams where he performed just as great. But unfortunately, so many people don't understand League at a high level that when they saw contracts playing for losing teams like Golden Guardians and stuff like that, they can't see the talent. They legitimately think that he's not good because he's surrounded by other players who aren't good and their team's not winning. And when you can only view League through results because you're not actually able to, you know, understand the decisions that are being made and see the talent, you know, contracts went from 2017 until very recently with NRG, went completely unutilized and underpaid in the LCS for years and years and years because of that contract decision and what Cloud9 did. And then on NRG, wasn't even really supposed to happen, but NRG just ended up being full of players like contracts, and they actually performed and won. And had it not been for that, years later, he may still be in the same situation or not even in the LCS because people can't recognize talent. And, you know, so I think Contracts' whole story is a bit tragic. But obviously, after, you know, NRG did well, he made it back to the big stage and Worlds and stuff like that. And so I think he's, you know, his career is a lot more secure. And he's been playing in the LCS for a very long time now. It's been almost 8 years. So, you know, he's probably chilling either way. But, you know, to me, it's just crazy that Contracts was not just after his rookie year on Cloud9. It's amazing to me that he was not just on a top team in the LCS like his entire career. But again, people aren't very good at recognizing talent because most people making these decisions don't know ball. They don't know how to play League, unfortunately. So that's kind of the Contracts arc, what happened with Contracts and with Zenith. So eventually after that, I realized that, like, you know, being an analyst for these teams was super fun. I learned a lot and it was super awesome to be a part of these teams, but it was taking too much of my time away from playing solo queue myself, and it was causing me to be a little bit stagnant. Because I was learning a lot, but I wasn't having a lot of time to translate it into my own solo queue games, because you got to grind a lot of games and it takes a long time, even if you understand things, to get the habits down and get good at League. And so, you know, after that tournament and Contracts leaving and stuff like that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop doing this and return to focusing on solo queue. The other thing I was convincing myself, which is probably an important life lesson, is that I was like networking. And that, you know, maybe it'll mean something later down the road, but I don't really think that the networking meant anything. Like, Contracts was the most consequential person that I met, and it's not like I'm in contact with him anymore. I mean, we were on Skype, everyone switched to Discord, so I don't really have his contact anymore, and stuff like that. I'm sure he hardly ever remembers me. It was a very brief period of time where they just played this one tournament, you know, so it's like. And then as far as team owners and stuff like that, I mean, we were working in amateur, and like Zenith is not, as far as I know, like super active or like at the top of the League of Legends amateur scene. Everything's evolved so much. It's just completely different people and completely different teams, you know, involved nowadays. But anyway, so I went back to focusing on solo queue. I think I was like, so let's see, we left off, I was like platinum or something like that. Shawn had got to diamond. He got deported from Korea. Sometime, I believe, while I was working with Zenith and stuff like that, I went from platinum to diamond on my own. And then I got pretty hard stuck in diamond and high platinum for a very, very long time. And I think that the biggest thing that was keeping me stuck in platinum and diamond for so long was, I guess, I mean, there were a couple of things. One thing that was keeping me stuck in platinum and diamond for a very long time was that I did not stick with my main champion and improve at my main champion when I was stuck. What I did was I would get to D4 or D3, peak, and then I would start losing games because that's my peak and I couldn't go higher than that, and I was stuck. And I was struggling in some of those games, especially in like D3. And rather than continuing to just play a bunch of Braum or whatever it was, I would constantly go on these losing streaks and then switch what champion I was playing because I felt like my champion just didn't work in the meta, or I needed to learn how to play more than one champion to get past D4 or D3. I think it's completely untrue. The problem was actually, in fact, the opposite. The problem is that when you experience strife and struggle and hardship when you're stuck at a peak or stuck at a rank, you need to play your main champion more so that you can get good enough on your main champion to get to a new peak with your main champion. I've said it before, but think of your rank with each champion as a separate rank. So if you're Diamond 4 with Braum, and you're Platinum 2 with Blitzcrank, and you're Platinum 3 with Leona, and you're like Platinum 4 with like Zyra or any random support that you pick, then if you pick Zyra because you're losing games in D4 with Braum, you're not going to do better because you picked a champion that's different or because you picked something that might be better in the meta. You're going to do worse because you're so much less experienced and have so much less knowledge of the champion, and inevitably you're actually going to demote down even harder and even further, because you're not playing a champion that you know. And so what happens is every time you get to your peak and experience any strife, rather than learning how to beat those games with Braum, you just switch champions, and then, well, now I'm having to figure out how to be better than Platinum 4 on Zyra, not how to be better than D4. And so switching champions like that was really unhelpful. So that was one of the things that I think definitely kept me hard stuck. Is you think when you're running into trouble, when you're not climbing for 100 games or 200 games, or when you're going on 10 game losing streaks, I need to switch what I'm doing. Like, this is insane to keep doing the same thing. But it's not, because you have to improve at the champion you're actually good at. Otherwise, you're never going to get past that peak. How are you going to be a D1 Braum player if you stop playing Braum every time you experience trouble in D4? It's never going to happen. So you actually have to stick with the champion or champion pool, whatever. If you play 2 or 3 champions, that's fine. But you have to stick with the same group of champions or the same champion. Otherwise, you're never going to actually improve and get better if you're always switching. So it's really important to not always switch. Other circumstantial things that happened that were really bad. The server was in California and I was playing on 20 ping, and they moved it to Chicago during this time. So then I went up to 60 ping. That may not sound like that big of a deal, but trust me, especially now as somebody who's hitting Challenger playing on now 12 ping, I've played on 60 ping, I've played on 20 ping, I've played on 12 ping, I played on 4 ping for a year, and I've also played, not a ton, but I've played like occasionally on 100 ping. Like if I played at Japan, I played on like 100 or 200 ping. Not a ton, but I have an account that's maybe level 15 or something like that on Japan. So I've experienced a wide range of pings, and it's a different game at 100 ping versus 60 ping. And it's a different game at 60 ping versus 20 ping. And it's a different game at 20 ping versus 4 ping. It's not even close. And so ping is huge. It really does matter, because what you can execute on 100 ping is different than what you can execute on 4 ping. So let's say I want to use Braum E to block an ability. On 4 ping, that's going to happen for me much more easily than it's going to happen on 100 ping. In fact, on 100 ping, there are certain things where I might not be able to react fast enough because that's just too long of a delay. It's just the way that it works. And Braum's not even that mechanically demanding of a champion, but there are other champions that are even worse than that. So it makes a big difference. I definitely think that like certain ranges, you're getting diminishing returns. So obviously like 20 is fine. 4 feels really great, and it does, you can feel a big difference between 4 and 20, but it's not gonna, it's not the end of the world, or it's not crazy. But I think if you're serious about going pro or something like that, you have to get to low ping. You have to literally go boot camp in Chicago. Or like, I was saying, I was playing on 4 ping. If you can get to a area like a metro area that has fiber that's near Chicago, specifically like a Milwaukee, right? Milwaukee is only 2 hours north of Chicago. It's a lot safer than Chicago, and you've got fiber straight to Chicago, so your ping is 4, even though you're in a different city. So I think Milwaukee's an option, Michigan's an option, Wisconsin, Illinois. I mean, I don't know about Indiana or other places, but I'm sure those places matter too. Maybe Missouri, right? And you see that this is, I think, something that's really interesting. You see that I think a lot more of the challenger players nowadays, and a lot more of the professional players even, are coming out of the Midwest rather than coming out of California. Back in season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, every single pro player was coming out of California. Why was every pro player coming out of California? I mean, there's multiple reasons. League culture was more of a thing there because obviously like the game was built there. A bit of a more like modern gaming culture and stuff like that than there is in, let's say, Iowa. It's like a techie place. It's also a lot of Asian people there. A lot of Asians prefer to play League. And those communities and friend groups heavily play League. That's just the way that it is. But also they were on low ping. You were playing in California, you were probably playing on like 4 or 8 ping or something back in the day. So that's going to make you naturally more likely to be one of the best players, or your best players from California, your 50 best players from California are all going to be challenger. Now you see a lot of players coming out of the boonies who are really good at the game. And I think the road to challenger runs through Chicago, it runs through Milwaukee, it runs through Detroit, it runs through the Midwest. And if you're really serious, I think, about going pro, if you're able to do it, need to seriously consider figuring out how to get an apartment or boot camp in Chicago, unironically. But I'm too old for that now, so it is what it is. My time has passed. But that would be the move. If I knew that back then, should have gone to Chicago when the server moved to Chicago, but I didn't know. So that's really important. That happened. And then also season 7 was the Ardent sensor meta, which, in some ways was a blessing and a curse. I actually had a really high win rate during the Ardent meta in some ways. I had a 60% win rate on Jana on 300 games played. I was grinding like crazy. But at the same time, I also played like 200 or 300 games on Karma with barely a 50% win rate. And I played like 300 or 400 games on Braum with maybe a 50% win rate or a less than a 50% win rate, even though I was a good Braum player, because the Ardent meta was so bad if you were an engaged support. And, so I spent most of the Ardent meta learning how to play enchanters rather than being able to abuse the Ardent meta. And so if you're a Braum player and, there's no more oppressive meta than only poke and enchanter champions rushing Ardent every game, and you cannot build Ardent on Braum. So that was a really rough meta with really rough ping changes at the same time as I was finishing my last year of high school, making sure I'm getting my grades up and graduating, since I was trolling and focused on League. And at the same time, as what else was my other reason? Well, I forget, but so there were all those life circumstances going on, all these things happening that made it really, really difficult, actually. So I was stuck in Diamond or Platinum, and then I started college, and I started my relationship with my wife. And for that first year that we were in a relationship together, and that I was in college, I barely played League at all. I played League mostly for fun. I think I played like 80 League games that entire year. We're talking about like one game every like 3 or 4 days or something like that. That was really low for me. I was usually averaging between like 700 and 1,000 games per year. So to go from that to cold turkey, all of a sudden I'm playing 80 games, was quite a change. But it was good. The relationship was good, obviously, to get into a relationship instead of, just playing league. Touch a little bit of grass, go to school, get a 4.0, that sort of thing. It made me realize how easy school was compared to league, because in league only 300 people can be challenger, but in school everyone can have a 4.0. Everyone can get A's. It's not that hard. And to be honest, it's a lot easier to get straight A's. I mean, it depends. Obviously, you have to have the brain for it. You have to have some, education. You can be set behind a lot if you didn't get a good start when you were a little kid. But I really think that compared to league, a lot easier to get A's in classes than it is to get challenger. That's for sure. I've said it like this before, but being the best at something is not always equivalent. So like being the best guitar player in the world, and being the best league player in the world, and being the best student in the world are like not equivalent, because you have different amounts of people trying to be the best at different things. And there are different levels of difficulty or amount of time that it takes to be good at things. We like to think that, oh, you'll just get good at everything at the same amount of time, or it's just as hard. And there's definitely a lot of crossover and a lot of things that are related that you have to figure out, but they're not the same. So if you try to be, let's say you try to be a professional league player, right? That's actually very, very difficult, because there's like, depending on what year we're talking about, there were like 40 professional league players back in the day when there were 8 teams, went up to 50 for a while during franchising when there was 10 teams. Now there's only 6 NA teams. So now we're down to, what would that even be like? Is that really 30? Wow, that's rough. And of course, half of those players are imported players or players who are grandfathered in, but that's a topic for another time. So maybe there's only 15 NA players from America and Canada that are actually going to be pro at a time. That's actually harder than being, in some ways, it's harder than being a rock star, or harder than being a professional football player. I mean, if you're a professional football player, there's 32 professional teams. There are, there's there's 22 players, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, but there's actually more than that. I believe they can field 52 players on their professional roster and payroll. So, I mean, 52 times 32 is a massive amount of players. And there's actually less people who are playing high school football and college football than there are playing league. So, like, there's less people you're competing with. There's more professional spots available. And that just comes with the territory, because it's something more people are interested in watching. And it's not something as many people are willing to play, or it's not as easy to play, because you're obviously like risking physical harm. It's a lot harder to queue up for a game of football in high school than it is to queue up for a game of league. Obviously, anyone can queue up for a game of league instantly. The game of football, you actually have to make a team. You actually have to do stuff, You actually have to have a bunch of people. But you get the idea. So like there's different levels of difficulty. And I think that when you look at league, it's one of the most difficult things you could do, actually, because there's so few challenger spots. There's so few professional spots, depending on what your goal is, right? For the number of people playing, it's nuts. So very, high player base, very ease of access. And yet to be at the top, only a tiny, tiny fraction of people can be at the top. And so it's really, really hard. Even a musician, right? There's probably more people who are trying to play music or trying to be professional musicians than there are trying to do league. But even still, there's probably hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, probably thousands of people who make a living from music. And when you look at league, how many people make a living from league? It's very, very small. So, it's a really tough thing to try to make it. So I think that's number one, is absolutely crazy to try to make it doing something like league, or to get to the top at all. It's very, very difficult. And it takes a lot of time. The other thing that I often run into, and I'll probably run into more, is like, of course, it's impressive that you get challenger or that you get to the top. People say the same thing about people like Tyler and stuff like that, but you just play more than other people. And that's true, but I just want to address this argument because I think it's an argument that you hear a lot. would you ever tell somebody who's really good at piano or really good at violin that the reason why they're better than everybody else in the public at violin or piano is just because they practice more than everybody, and you think that that's a bad thing, or that means that they're not good, or they're not special, or that takes away from their achievement? At the end of the day, what getting better at something is all about is that you put in more work and more time and more practice than other people. That's the only way you're ever going to get good at anything. Nobody was ever born instantly good at the violin, or instantly good at piano, or instantly good at the guitar, or instantly good at League of Legends. People had to put in the time. Even the people who look talented, I find most of the time, who are able to climb really quickly in League, they didn't actually climb that quickly. They climbed that quickly because they were already very good at another game that they spent years playing. So nobody touches a PC game for the first time and suddenly in 1 year becomes the best League of Legends player to ever play the game. It's never happened before. You either have people who grind for like 5, 6, 7, 8+ years. Some people it takes a little bit longer. Some people it's a little bit faster, depending on how quickly you pick it up and get it, depending on how quickly you get over certain milestones and hurdles and stuff like that, and how good of a mentality and mindset you have at improving and that sort of thing, and if you know where to look for advice. But you either, I think if you never played a PC game before and you're not familiar with video games, it's going to take you at least 5 years to get really good, to get to like a Master Plus level. There are exceptions to that. But as a general rule of thumb, most people, it's going to take at least 5 years to get really good, if not longer. And to get to like Masters Plus, if you're already the equivalent of Masters Plus in another game, you can get there in a year or two. But that's still no short period of time, especially when you consider you've already invested 4 or 5 years in another game to get that good with the computer and with the mouse and keyboard in the first place. So it's no easy thing to do. I think that people who want to discredit people who are good at something because they've dedicated their time into one thing and gotten better than everybody else at that one thing, it's a lot of cases because people are upset that they didn't put their time into getting good at one thing that they really liked. And that's just a huge piece of life advice in general. Life is really short, and you have a decision to make with your life. You can either spend 10,000 hours or whatever getting really good at something that you enjoy. Be careful about the thing that you choose. Would I have chosen League of Legends now as a 25-year-old, rather than having just started playing it with my friends back when I was in 8th grade and like 13 or 14 years old? I would not have chosen League of Legends. I probably would have rather learned the piano or focused more on singing or music or something like that. I really enjoy music a ton. And there's no doubt in my mind, how good, if I had put the hours I put into League, into like piano and guitar and singing and stuff like that, I'd be like incredible. Would I trade? It's hard because I enjoy both, right? And it's just the way that it goes. But it would be fun to think about, well, what if I had done this instead? And I think for me, I do care a lot about what other people think. And it's a little bit depressing that, what am I going to tell my family, right? It doesn't even mean anything to my family that I hit this or that I'm good at League. They don't know. It doesn't mean anything to them. I'm probably not even going to bother to tell them. It just doesn't matter to people, right? So there's a lot of people it just doesn't matter to. And that kind of sucks. So if you care about that feedback from other people, that shouldn't be the sole reason why you're doing things either. You shouldn't just spend 12 years of your life doing something for other people, like I said before. But if you're that type of person, you're that type of person, and you want to do something that makes other people happy, or that the most other people will enjoy, do something that's popular. Don't do something that is niche like League. So, I would say that, in theory, if you wanted to do something that, could more translate easily to normies, when you choose what you're going to spend your life doing and what you're going to be good at, you have a couple of choices. One, do I want to devote 10,000 hours and 12 years of my life to doing one thing just so I can be really good at it? Or am I okay with being average at a lot of things and but I live a much more chill, stress-free life. I don't have to grind. I don't have to make the sacrifices to spend so much time focusing on one thing. I can just chill. For some people, they're going to say, honestly, I'd rather be average and just chill and enjoy the ride. And for some people, they're going to say, I really, really, really want to be, this thing. I have enough LP, but, we've got to wait for it to update in a little bit. 11 hours still, but I'm good. Some people are going to, what was I saying? Some people are going to want to chill, and some people are really, really going to want to dedicate themselves to something. And I would just say, when you're thinking about dedicating yourself to something, or even if you're already a year or two into dedicating yourself to something, if it's going to take you 10 years anyways, you might want to think like, is this really the thing that I want to dedicate my life to, or get really, really good at, or my youth to? Are there other things that I'd rather do? Would I rather play sports? Would I rather play music? Would I rather play League? Like, what is it that I'm passionate about that I actually want to spend all my time and energy doing, versus other stuff? So I'm just throwing that one out there. So, yeah, let's see. Where were we with the story? So, oh, all those bad circumstances. So then college started. I played like 80 games. I practically quit compared to how much I was playing before my first year of college. I didn't play a lot my second year of college either. I was still back in Washington, and I got on student government. I won't get into all that. I mean, that's just random stuff that doesn't have to do with League. That was like a miserable experience. I just didn't agree politically, and not just politically, but thinking wise, because student government really shouldn't be that political. Like, the decisions aren't really that liberal or that conservative. It's just like, are you reasonable or not, at that level? And I was basically on, a group of people in the student government where it's like me and this Vietnamese guy were reasonable. There was another guy. I mean, there were some other guys in there that were reasonable, but we had an interesting bunch, that voted some interesting ways. And, when you're in a minority like that, like 7-2 on almost every issue, and there's not a lot that you can do or say to change anyone's mind, it's very, very frustrating, especially when you seem to care more than those other people, and they just have like these lukewarm takes on everything. Very, very frustrating. We'll probably get into this at some point later, but I do think it's very interesting when you dive into like high elo League, high elo chess. I think it's very interesting that the players at the very, very top of chess and at League tend to have certain political views, not even one way or the other necessarily, but just kind of more extreme political views, I think, than your average person. And I'd be very interested in reading, like, because I think there's going to be more information about like studies about it and stuff like that related to chess than there are going to be for League. Obviously, there's probably no literature, but I think it would be interesting to dive into like, why are high elo League players, um, you know, leaning the way that they are politically, let's say, is a very interesting question, and chess players and stuff like that as well. Um, but anyway, so where was I? Oh, so the student government thing was miserable. And then COVID hit us in the middle of the year. And COVID changed everything because, to be honest, I was definitely like leaning towards like, I was kind of done with League. I wasn't playing very much for 2 years. I'd been just like maintaining like low diamond or plat for the last couple of years because I was barely ever playing the game. And I'd probably like gotten really rusty. And, it was just the least amount of time that I played. Like, it was the closest you could say I was to like walking away from the game. But when COVID came back, started with a lot of Minecraft again. But I got back into gaming. And when the Minecraft arc kind of came to an inevitable end, it was like, okay, maybe I get back into League. And then when I transferred schools, Ripley and I went together to Michigan, it was like, okay, well, now my ping is really low. And that's interesting. And this feels really nice to play. And there, it seems like there's some new possibilities here with the game. And it's also still COVID, so there's a lot of, classes online and that sort of thing, extra time to play, not much to do. And I get back into grinding League, and I get to a point again where I'm kind of trolling. I'm like, I had gotten back to D4 again, but then demoted back to Platinum again. And then, I got demoted from D4 to Platinum, which is hard to do because you're at like the last division of a rank, like 10 times over the course of me playing League. And there's a saying that somebody told me that was very similar to what I was going through. Some Buddhist saying or something like that, like get knocked down 6 times, get up 8 or something like that, or get knocked down 7 times, get up 8 or something like that, you know. And it's very much like that. Um, yeah, we're both Wolverine alum. Wait, you went to Michigan? Holy moly. I had no idea. Yeah, we're both Michiganders. Um, but basically, the situation there was like I just got back into League and I demoted all the way from D4 to Platinum 4 again, and it was just the most frustrating thing ever. And I finally had enough, and I literally had a moment. I even remember the game, right? Like there's certain games I remember from solo queue years later. Could recount them. Like my first ranked game, I remember, I had switched to support, and I originally played a little bit of top lane while I was leveling. But my first ranked game ever, I got Cho'Gath jungle, and it was a disaster in bronze. And then there's a game I remember well where we were playing against a Blitzcrank Draven, which is a pretty rough, hard lane to play against. Ethan and I were playing against Blitzcrank Draven when I was staying at his dorm in college. I was like hanging out at his dorm. We were duoing together, and we were trying to figure out what we should pick. And we picked Jinx Tom Kench, which is like very, very, very immobile and vulnerable to Blitzcrank Draven, I would say. But the thinking was, oh, well, Tom Kench can protect Jinx from Blitzcrank because I can eat him. But it's like that was, not that easy. So we got absolutely rolled and got into an argument with each other. And then he called his other friend on Skype or something like that. And I was singing the whole time that he was on call. And he like moved his desk. We had all our desks set up like a gaming house in the living room of their apartment. There was like 4 bedrooms and 1 living room they were sharing. And we had moved all our desks out there. And then Ethan, like after that happened, he was like so tilted he didn't talk to me for 2 days and moved his desk back into his room and locked his door, and we didn't play for 2 days. It was crazy. So this game that I remember is I was playing so bad, and I was like switching champions, switching roles, I was doing whatever, and people were playing a little bit of Lee Sin mid at the time, so I just decided to play like a Lee Sin mid game for fun. And streamed it to my friends on Discord or something. And I just got absolutely destroyed. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is a disaster. Like, it's such a bad season. Like, I'm having like the worst time of my life ever. Like, I'm literally trolling my games. Like, what am I doing? And so I, at that point, went back to like seriously playing support, pretty much just sticking with Braum no matter what. And I turned that season around from like I'm demoting to Plat 4 to all of a sudden in a very short period of time. It's literally in like 2 months. I went from Plat 4 all the way to Masters for the first time in less than like literally like less than 3 months. And at the same time, I realized like, hey, Michigan has a league team I can play for. Let's try out for the Michigan league team. And then we all know this story, but like the Michigan league team thing was a disaster because I think colleges need to have an adult running the program, or at least figure out some sort of non-biased way to pick players for the team. But most colleges, right, it's just being run by the students as a club rather than being run as a sport by the athletics department. So when that's the case and there's no adults involved, the players are just going to pick whoever their friends are to be on the team. And look, there was, it made a lot of sense. I wasn't even thinking that I should necessarily replace the starter or even the other guy that we had who was also Masters. But I was like Masters for the first time. These two were both Masters 100 LP. They were both Thresh one tricks in solo queue. I was Braum one trick in solo queue. The argument was is that both of them had played in Collegiate before and had shown that they have a wider champion pool, whereas I didn't really show that I have a wide champion pool. But I was cut from the tryout after 2 games of going 2-0 and playing totally fine on two different champions. So I don't really know what else I was supposed to do at that point. So that was just like weird. And like I said, they had 3 teams. They could have made up a 4th team if they wanted to, or even just not had me on a team, but like have me be a part of the group and the team and like be a sub for the team or something like that and see how I develop in solo queue if I put a lot of effort into it. But I think they were mostly just interested in playing with each other, playing with their friends. I think they may have been renting an apartment together or something like that. And like the people who are on the roster from last year, like may have literally lived together. Is what I had heard. So it was just absolutely. I didn't go to the dollar store for a balloon. I think my wife is going to make me a chocolate cake. She's probably working on that. So we got that coming. But yeah, it was just a disaster. I think the way that was run. And obviously, like now at the end of the night, I'm going to hit Challenger. I mean, to be fair, that was a couple of years ago, but I think I really don't think, like, honestly, I really don't think gameplay wise, I've changed a lot, to be honest. I think it's just been time to grind and also like I could have put the time in that I've put in now back then if I knew I was participating with the team. But when I'm just not on the team, what's the point? Like, so there wasn't a whole lot going on back then. So that was just a bad experience all around. I ran into Instant the other day in solo queue. I actually kind of had a bad game and ran him down a little bit. But in my defense, I mean, we could even look at the game. It's probably because we know each other from before. But I have not played with an 80 carry that was so hard to play with. Not bad, but just hard to play with than playing that game with Instant and solo queue. So Instant was the 80 carry for that team. And the vibes were off because when I walked into the room where we were meeting for the first time, I introduced myself and said hello, and he said that I ran him down in solo queue or something like that one time, which makes sense because like, I mean, I didn't run him down, but like I had a bad game and like, fed or whatever. And it makes sense because like I'm in Masters for the first time. I'm like learning. I'm feeling it out, But you don't hold that one solo queue game over somebody's head who goes to the same college as you, for months after the fact. It's just strange, I didn't even know that I had played with the guy. The guy knows who I am. So, I mean, that's crazy to me. And then, like I said, like the Omli was fine. He was the mid laner. He was probably the highest ranked player on the team. I think I remembered. So Omli was the mid laner, but Max was also a mid laner, or maybe previously had played mid, but he was not playing because both of them were so good at mid. But like, well, not really, but like Omli was so much better at mid that he was just like going to help manage the team and not play. But I think like the bias to cut me after 2 games and keep literally every other support, even D4 players, was crazy. Part of it, like I said, is that I was a senior, and so they'd rather have a D4 player, who's a sophomore or a freshman or something like that, because they could potentially develop more while they're at the school than I could. But I think that there's some things that are BS about that. I think you could play while you were in graduate school, and they didn't know whether I was going to go to graduate school there or not. They didn't ask. Not that I wasn't planning on it, but honestly, I was considering. And honestly, as scuffed as it sounds, if I had been playing on a league team or something like that, I might have considered going to graduate school to extend my playing career there. I mean, it makes sense, right? But yeah, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, to be honest. The potential upside for somebody who has hit Masters for the first time and is still yet to peak is a lot higher than somebody who's in D4 And all of those players who were in D4 never saw anything out of them ever again. As far as I can tell, like there was another guy who actually played a lot of Braum, who was D4, and I'm pretty sure that he never got past D4. I think he plays TFT now or something. So, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Thank you, thank you. So, there was that situation, and then left Michigan disappointed with no collegiate playing, and did some financial licensing and stuff like that once out of school. And then I started Palisade Esports. And Palisade Esports was kind of similar to the concept we had with like Zenith Esports, where basically I just started my own amateur team and I added like everybody on the solo queue ladder to try to see who was interested in playing. Obviously, a lot of people didn't add me. Another tip about going pro, not that there's anyone here probably who's trying to go pro, but you can only have 300 people on your friends list. So it's really important. It's crazy how many challenger players are like this, right? Their friends list is maxed out from playing for years, right? You need to clear your friends list. There's like legit people who are like adding you to like give you applications to like teams and tryouts and stuff like that. There are challenger players, like literally dozens of challenger players who I cannot send a friend request to because their friend list is full. You always need to have, even if you're going to like max out your friends list, have like 10 spots open or something like that so that you can receive friend requests from people who are trying to give you tryout invitations. That's just crazy to me that people don't understand that. Did you play with Value 247? Let me look him up or something like that. I feel like Value is a very familiar name. Oh, okay. So Value is a challenger 80 carry player, or I don't know what he is now, but I've definitely seen this guy in the Michigan. There's like a Michigan esports Discord, not the University of Michigan, but like the state of Michigan. I don't think, maybe I've played with him, randomly ran across him in solo queue before, but I don't think I ever like played with him at college or anything like that. But yeah, I definitely know him. Definitely know him. We were in that Discord together for sure. We were like we were probably like only, there were only a couple of us who are like actually really high elo or whatever. I mean, he was higher than other people, I think, but I don't know that. I don't know whether he went to Michigan or not. Maybe he did, but probably before my time. Oh, he was on Zenith at one point. That's cool. But yeah, no, just those two rosters with Zenith. But that is an interesting coincidence. It's crazy actually because Zenith never really did a whole lot of crazy stuff with League, but there are a lot of really good players who have been on Zenith at some point or been through it. But yeah, so let's see, where were we? So, oh yeah. So I started Palisade Esports. I just, was looking for players off of the ladder. A bunch of people applied. The roster building process was actually really weird because I ended up picking up a whole group of people that were kind of like a package deal, 5-man team already ready to go, rather than, I guess it was originally a 4-man team and we had a jungler, but then he got cut and then they replaced him with somebody they knew who played jungle, which was it was the right thing to do. Like the guy was underperforming in scrims and that's just the way that it was. But, so it was weird because I didn't really put the roster together myself the way I had originally thought. I mean, I honestly could have put 2 rosters together with the amount of recruiting I did. But that team was fairly successful. I mean, it could have been better, but they went 2-3 in the open qualifier. So they brought back the open qualifier for Challenger Series. But now instead of qualifying through ranked 5s, because team ranked 5s doesn't exist anymore, you get a certain amount of points based on, like, if you're challenger, you get a certain number of points. If you're grandmaster, you get a certain number of points. If you're masters, you get a certain number of points. And those points add up, and the top 25 teams or something like that, by points based off of their solo queue rankings of their players, get into the tournament. And then, if you do well in the tournament, you can get into the Challenger Series or whatever they're calling it now. And if you get into the Challenger Series or Academy or whatever it is, of course, you can qualify now because there's one guest spot in LCS, which currently I think Disguised Toast Team has. But they went 2-3. One of the reasons why they went 2-3, I mean, they could have played a lot better. I think all of those games were winnable. I was a little bit disappointed with how we played. But one of the reasons why we went 2-3 for sure was because of seeding. I think we were seeded out of like 32 teams as like the 26th team or something like that, which wasn't really fair because our team was all five challenger players, including challenger substitutes with like a GM coach or something like that. And we were ranked 26th or something like that. They also had every single one of them, all five of the players on the team had played Collegiate as well. So they were like used to competitive and stuff like that too. So you had like teams that were filled with, like 3 GM players that were legitimately ranked above us because the seeding was just based on like the opinions of the people who were running the Challenger Series and the casters and stuff like that. And it's no personal bias of theirs exactly. It's just that I think that, how do you know, right? You've probably never seen these people play. There's no way with 32 teams and 5 players per team, there's no way you're going to go out and watch you're not going to watch footage or film or VOD review 150 players. So these guys, are just guessing at how good teams are. But I think that they deserved a higher seeding, and had they gotten a higher seeding, they would have gotten a little bit easier matches, played against some lower ranked teams. When you're the 26th seed and you're going to go up against like the 6th seed in your first game or something like that, of course you're going to drop a game. And so it becomes just a ping pong back and forth where it's like, okay, you lose to the 6th best team, no duh. And then you win versus, the next team you play that's like middle of the pack. And then now you're going up against, one of the, you're one of the lowest seeds that's somehow at 1-1 because you were way better than the middle of the pack. So now you're going up against like the 4th best team. Of course, you're going to lose that game. Now you're going up against like you're 1-2. You're going to go back to playing against like middle of the pack or lower teams. You're going to win that one. But now, of course, being the 26th seed at 2-2 and 1 game away from moving on to the next stage, of course, you're going to play against another really good team again. So now you play against like the number 2 seed, and it's just like screwed up because like you played against like the number 2, the number 4, and like the number 6 seed or something like that in your 3 losses, and hey, you just played against like maybe the number 7 or 8 or 9 seed or something like that. You just clearly make it. So I think that their seeding system left a lot to be desired for that one. But I think the team could have played a lot better and could have won some of their games, especially the last one as well. So that's just very unfortunate. But it was a good experience, and a good experience for the players. And, so I didn't keep doing that. Maybe I should have kept doing that, but it was a big time commitment, just like with Zenith. And obviously I had, I was in Masters at that point, and I think I'd hit GM at some point while I was working with the team, or maybe slightly after. But, I wanted to keep working on myself and playing solo queue and doing my own stuff, and got really busy after financial licensing and stuff like that. So it wasn't really viable for me to keep that up forever. So, I had to make a time decision, didn't keep doing that. And then obviously like last split, ended GM for the first time, even though I've been GM for a little bit over a year now, on and off. So last split, we finally ended GM. Now at the end of today, 10 hours from now, 11 hours from now, obviously we're going to hit Challenger for the first time. And then hopefully by the end of this year, I'll actually be good enough to maintain Challenger, or like to hold Challenger or get Challenger at the end of the year. So right now I definitely see myself as like, I've always said it, just for the content, I'll probably start calling myself a Challenger player. But, I always said it, it's even still in the descriptions of my videos. I think I always called myself like a master/GM player or something like that. I think I didn't change it to Grandmaster player until I finished a season in GM. So I just recently changed it. I still consider myself like a GM Challenger player because those are the lobbies I'm playing in. And that's kind of the rank that I'm at. Just touching Challenger for the first time, it sort of makes you a Challenger player. It sort of doesn't. So I'm obviously going to call myself a challenger player for YouTube and Twitch and stuff like that, because obviously like that's good for content and the brand. But I'm realistic about these things. I think that you hit a rank for the first time, and especially a rank like challenger where the threshold's constantly moving up on you. And the reality is that there's a big difference between hitting it for the first time, especially near the start of the season when the LP threshold is low, and actually being able to maintain it and hold it for a long time. So there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made, in order to actually be able to hold it. The other thing is like, and maybe I just kind of stalled out a little bit at the end, but I'm a little bit, I already addressed this argument, but like, I played a lot more games than most people so far this split, and that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And to some extent, that means that, I put in more time and more effort, more practice, and, that's the inevitable result that you're going to get, is you're going to get better when you do that. But I think some people are going to look at this and say, wow, you played like a ridiculous amount of games, like people who didn't have time to do that. Or, is Jordan 69 better because he was able to do the same thing in 100 games that you did in 220 games? And maybe he is, but, we'll see. But I've said this before too. I think experience is really important, and putting in time and effort to practice is really important. And so even if somebody was able to do it faster than me, depends on what the circumstances were. Is this somebody's old account, fresh account? Were they higher LP than me and MMR than me last split? Where's my level of skill at now compared to their level of skill, and that kind of thing. So I don't really know. It's all hard to say. But obviously, moving forward, I've just got to work on actually being able to hold challenger consistently and end challenger and that sort of thing, just like anybody does when they get to any rank for the first time. I'm definitely excited though, because I think that this opens up a lot of possibilities. Although I'm probably going to play a little bit less League, to be honest, at least than I have for the first. Well, I know I'm going to for the first 2 or 3 weeks. The season was an absolute crazy grind. But one of the things that I will say that I am kind of looking forward to, I do like proving people wrong. And one of the easiest, most obvious logical next steps is I'm kind of debating whether I want to continue just playing Braum and trying to get to really high up in Challenger. But there's also a big part of me that wants to like do a little bit of learning other roles. Because there's a lot of people who talk a lot of shit about support players. And as far as I know, there's not very many support players who started the game playing support, who got to Challenger first on support. Like there's plenty of people who played mid lane, got really good at mid lane, and then they switched to support and they were naturally very good at support. But how many people like actually just main support the whole time for years, got good at the game through support, and then switched over to, let's say, AD carry or something like that, or or mid lane or top lane or jungle or whatever the case may be, and proved that support players and the skill set that they bring to the table and their mindset and ability to improve at the game is just as viable in another role as it is in support. So I love proving the doubters wrong and getting to Challenger. And I feel like a next fun thing to do logically would be, I've been really enjoying playing AD carry, but I haven't really been able to do a ton of climbing because I'm constantly rusting and de-rusting on AD carry and not putting in the number of games that I would need to get to like a diamond or a master's level with AD carry. So I'm just kind of casually playing like, maybe a handful, like 20, 30 AD carry games a year or a split, and just kind of maintaining like Emerald. And I'm sure that if I put in, a reasonable amount of time, that if I were to main AD carry for a year or something like that, I'm sure that I could hit masters on AD carry. And I'd like to show people that even playing a mechanically demanding role like AD carry, support players are totally capable of doing it. People who are very good at the game, obviously we've seen with Tyler already, can translate from one role to another if they have a year or so to practice the role and can put in the games to get good at it. Because at the end of the day, the mindset that you had and the things that you needed to know to improve and be self-critical in support are going to apply to any other role you want to do. It's just a matter of, do you have the hands to do it? A lot of people don't think support players have the hands, don't think support players can play other roles at the same level as support. And sure, that's true. Like, duh. I mean, if I played 10,000 games on support and I played 100 games on mid lane, and I get filled to mid lane and I go up against a guy who's played 10,000 games on mid lane, no duh, he's going to dumpster me. That doesn't mean support players are inherently bad at the game. That just means I haven't practiced mid lane at all. So, you bet if I played mid lane for a year, I'd be crushing these people. So I'd like to do something like that at some point, specifically with AD carry, maybe with jungle as well. I think jungle would be too easy, actually. Although that'll piss the jungle players off, because I've already played jungle on my main account probably now, like, I mean, we could go back and look at the specifics, but I've probably played at least 50 games of jungle on my main account while I've been Masters Plus, at a 50+% win rate. So I'm already sure that I can play jungle Masters Plus. In fact, I see some junglers in my games that don't know how to play jungle as well as I know how to play jungle. And I haven't really done that much jungling. So it's just, support and jungle, I think, are the most similar roles. I can play tank champions in jungle in a way that I can't in AD carry. I can rely on less mechanically demanding champions like Amumu and Maokai and use my game knowledge and my macro moving around the map and counterplay on the other side of the map and that sort of thing to get what I want to get done in games. And it's not a mechanically difficult role, especially if you're playing champions like that, because you're PvE 90% of the time, like I said. And the 10% of the time you are skirmishing with people, you're ganking them from a superior positioning, meaning you're usually flanking them or something like that, or that they don't have vision of you, and so they have a hard time outplaying you, and you're usually outnumbering them unless you're getting, counter ganked at the same time. So I think jungle by far is the easiest role, easier than support. People say one of the reasons why supports are bad is because you don't learn mechanics like last hitting and trading properly. Well, supports actually do nothing but trade because they don't have to last hit. And junglers don't have to worry about last hitting either because nothing, minions and lane opponents don't even exist in the jungle, so they can't even get their minions denied or get pushed off of a minion or something like that by an opponent. So none of the trading or the last hitting or any of this stuff that people say makes AD carries good mechanically applies to jungle at all, yet for some reason jungle players are considered mechanically fine and support players are considered bad. So I don't know where that comes from, but I'd probably be easier to prove a point through jungle than it would, because most of my beef is with jungle mains, to be honest. Everybody gets mad at their jungler. So I have more to prove, I think, against jungle mains than I do against AD carries. So this would be interesting to maybe try jungle next or something like that. But it's really a hard decision because I know I'm going to play a little bit less League anyways. And then on top of that, like, do I want to keep going with Braum? I don't want to just like touch Challenger and then like never play support, or like not get to that level where I'm able to easily maintain Challenger. I want to be easily able to get Challenger whenever I want, not just touch it. So that's obviously going to take more work, more effort, more improvement on support. And I think it would also be really cool. Obviously, I think some people are throwing this out. I don't know whether this is true or not, that I'm the first Braum main, or like Braum one trick, which you have to define that. It's a little bit hard because there are certainly challenger players who are better than me who play a little bit of Braum or who like Braum as a champion or something like that. But when you look at people who, let's say, play 50% or 60% of their solo queue games or more, for me it's much more, on one champion, and that champion is Braum, I've been told, but I don't know 100%, but I'm sure YouTube comments will correct me or whatever. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm the only Braum one trick to get challenger and NA, but it's what I've been told by multiple people. So if that's the case, that's really cool. I just would say that you can get challenger, even challenger, genuinely on any champion you want. It's just hard. It's really hard. I mean, look at it, good friend, like look at Light Rocket. Where's Light Rocket? Where's Light Rocket? Is he in here? He's probably offline, like everyone else right now. Okay, like look at Light Rocket, right? Light Rocket is the Taric jungle player, right? This guy is consistently challenger on Taric jungle. If he can be consistently challenger on Taric jungle, and I can one-trick Braum through Karmas and Sennas and Lulus and whatnot to get to Challenger, I'm pretty sure you can get to Challenger on any champion. Just because somebody else hasn't done it yet or hasn't done it first doesn't mean it's not possible. The other thing I will say about like being the first Braum one trick to get Challenger in NA is very important that we say in NA, because there have been some really good Korean Braum one tricks, including that guy I remember a couple of years ago who was pioneering Glacial Augment Braum when Glacial Augment slowed your auto attacks, like Ash passive. That guy was Challenger rank 1, I believe, in Korea, one tricking Braum. So it's definitely possible. And, if that guy could do it in Korea, it's probably even easier to do it in NA, right? So obviously it's possible. Now, maybe if you're playing something really off meta, like Taric Jungle actually has some things about it that work well. If you're playing something completely random, like if, I don't know, you want to play like, what's something that really doesn't work? Like you want to play like Z80 carry or something like that, probably not going to get to Challenger. But you can pretty much play any champion in a role that they actually work in somewhat, and get to Challenger. I do believe that. Just because somebody hasn't done it yet doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just that there's very few people who are even Challenger in the first place. So when there's only 300 people in Challenger at a time anyways, you're just not going to see, and most of those people aren't one tricks. So let's say only half of those people are one tricks, and it's probably even less than that, but let's say only half are one tricks. So there's 150 people. Well, there's more than 150 champions, so it's not even possible for there to be a one trick for every champion in Challenger at every given time. So I think it's possible. Even Yuumi? I don't know about Yuumi. I lose a lot of games on Yuumi. But yes, even Yuumi. I actually think that there's a Yuumi player I played against the other day who's Challenger. But yes, even Yuumi. And Yuumi has a pretty bad win rate right now, actually. See if I can find the guy. Shouldn't be that hard to find, I feel like, but I played so many games, it could be buried in the depths of my match history. I mean, that's where we're at. I think I'll end the video there, that I'm recording, because I think that's pretty much it as far as the personal story goes, and we'll continue on with our victory stream here, but yeah, I mean, you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Just make sure before you spend 12 years on something, you pick something that you really want to spend 12 years on or 10,000 hours on, that you actually really enjoy doing and you really think other people will enjoy, if you're the type of person that gets, your energy and excitement out of doing something and being really good at something from other people around you enjoying it. I'm lucky that even with League being kind of a niche thing, there are a ton of people who are super supportive and like, love what I'm doing with League and what other people are doing with League, and that's amazing. But obviously, like, if you're talking about like your family and the Normans, right, like play piano or some shit instead of League, men. But I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you. But pick something that's maybe a little bit easier. Pick something that maybe more people can enjoy, that's not so niche, but do obviously what you love to do. So for the video, good luck in the solo queue and have a wonderful day.